Hello and welcome. I'm Gideon Weil, Vice President and Editorial Director of Harper One, and it's my pleasure to be here for a one-of-a-kind conversation with Rhonda Byrne and David Bingham to launch the global publication of The Greatest Secret. I am happy to introduce Rhonda Byrne. Rhonda is the international best-selling author of The Secret, which was a revelation to millions. Her new book, The Greatest Secret, is a powerful invitation that will dissolve fears and uncertainty and open you to a life of lasting happiness. Rhonda's mission is to bring joy to billions. And I'm pleased to also introduce David Bingham. David is one of the teachers whose wisdom is shared in The Greatest Secret. He spent decades as a spiritual seeker before waking up to who he really is. It was in an interview where David shared his experience of self-realization that helped spark Rhonda's own awakening. Okay, so let's begin with why we're here and what we can all learn from our guests. Those watching now are likely familiar with The Secret. Rhonda, would you share with us the distinction between The Secret and The Greatest Secret and the journey from then until now?
Okay, glad to. So let me think. I always describe The Secret differently, which is very nice. So The Secret, we learned that we create our life through our thoughts and through our mind. We learn that our mind is incredibly powerful and our thoughts are incredibly powerful. And so we can create the life that we want. And so what we think about and what we focus on is what will show up and is what we will experience in life. However, it works whether we want something or whether we don't want something. So whatever thoughts we empower, those thoughts are the thoughts that will manifest. And so with The Greatest Secret is the way out of suffering and the way to lasting happiness. And I think I should define what suffering is, because sometimes people think that suffering might be somebody who's in grief or somebody who's really struggling with pain and illness and just extreme situations. But suffering comes in the most subtle forms too. And so all of our suffering comes from negative thoughts and negative feelings. And we experience those things. One of the things that The Greatest Secret does is it frees us of negative thoughts and negative feelings. And so it frees us of things like uncertainty, unworthiness, fear, anxiety, stress, all of those emotions that none of us like to experience. The Greatest Secret shows you the way out of all of those things and in their place to have lasting happiness.
I love that. So Rhonda, David, I'd love to hear a little bit about how you came to meet and as that is connected to The Greatest Secret and the journey.
Okay.
Would you like to begin?
Yeah.
Okay. Who do you want to begin?
Let's go with David to start.
Okay, great.
Well, I actually never set out to become a teacher. I was a seeker for many years, and then from the year 2000 to 2005, there was quite a rapid progression in the way my true nature was being revealed. And I saw my true nature in November 2005. And there was a period of integration, and actually The Secret played a part in that, because The Secret was released in 2006. And what I started to realize is that it was really important to make the transition between relying on the mind and using intuition. And so The Secret was actually a very crucial part of that. And so the process of integration happened over maybe a 2 or 3 year period. And then I was invited to appear on a program called Conscious TV, where they were interviewing people who had realized their true nature. What came as a result of that is that even though the mind following self-realization was saying, oh, it would be wonderful to share this knowledge with people. It was something that I wasn't able to do on a personal level. I did try that, but it didn't actually work. So I had to kind of just surrender. And as a result of that, people started to approach me. And so I realized that because our true nature is effortless being, we can actually learn to function from the level of effortless being, which is allowing things to come to us rather than pursuing them and using the mind to plan certain strategies. And that really is the way the whole thing unfolded. So because it's an effortless process, it's also to do with making oneself available. So if people feel inspired to approach me and want to discuss the nature of realization, then I will always be available, or I would certainly try to be. And the amazing thing is that infinite intelligence will bring things to us. And I think that's one of the key things for people who are familiar with the principles of The Secret, because what we've all learned from that is that there is actually an intelligence which exists outside the mind. And that guiding intelligence is the crucial thing. So those who are already familiar with The Secret are actually a long way towards realization already, because they already know that there is this intelligence which is way beyond the limitations of the human mind.
Excellent. So Rhonda, you were studying ancient traditions for years. You were continuing your sort of personal spiritual growth, and then you heard a podcast, David on Conscious TV. Can you just speak a little bit about sort of how that changed the trajectory of your development and that moment, and then that conversation that followed?
Yes. So basically from The Secret, in finding that truth of The Secret, I knew there had to be more truth. And I just became the sincerest seeker that you could ever find, because I searched 7 days a week from the time The Secret was released. And it was a wonderful search. And I went through all of the traditions. Yes, I did. And I discovered so many things, dazzling things, fantastic things. But none of them had me feel that I'd found the truth. Now, because I was living according to the principles of The Secret, my mind was predominantly positive. So I felt really great, and my life was incredible. It really, really was incredible, unrecognizable from what it had been prior to that. And so I kept searching and kept searching. And then there was this incident that happened, and it really wasn't even such a big incident. It was quite a small incident, but I suddenly felt this very profound disappointment and all in my stomach. And I thought, how can I possibly feel this bad when I always feel so good? And so what I did to turn that around was I just grabbed my iPad. It was late at night, and I went to bed, and I grabbed my iPad, and I thought, I've just got to listen to somebody, speaking positively about the world and life. And I noticed that they had an interview, and had been done previously many years earlier, with not a teacher, but just an everyday person like you and I. And he had been on a search for the truth for decades, and he had found the truth. And I was just like beside myself. I watched that interview all the way through, and then, which was David, of course, and then I followed in David's footsteps. I did exactly what he did. He said he had listened to a particular podcast, so I went and listened to that podcast. And I don't even, and this was January 2016. So I love the fact that David remembered when he realized, when he sort of realized his true nature, because I will just never forget January 2016. And I reached out to David to see if I could connect with him. And he responded straight away, and I connected with him, and he he was just so extraordinary. I get quite teary if I think about it. He was just so amazing, and he helped me see what was right in front of me, and that had been right in front of me my entire life. And it was just the most incredible moment to see the truth of something like that. And so, and I stayed connected with David, and David was so wonderful. He said to me, he said, now you have to write a book and take it to the world. And I just said, oh, I don't know if I could do that. And so basically what I did was I spent the next 4 years integrating it so that I could write a book that was as simple as possible and as clear as possible. And one of the reasons that I'd taken lots of notes and from teachers, and I had a folder on my computer with lots and lots of notes. But one of the reasons why I didn't want to do anything too early was because I really wanted to have a simple path. And, you know, I had come across this 2 years earlier and I hadn't seen it. I had missed it. I missed it. And so I was determined that I would write a book where no one would miss it. No one. Everyone would experience it and no one would miss it. And so, and that's, you know, basically what it took. So The Greatest Secret was born. And I mean, there is that massive revelation in the book, but over the next 4 years, I discovered so many things about the truth behind the world, and, you know, so much, and it's all contained in that book. So it's a 14-year journey that no one has to take, but I wouldn't trade that journey for anything. So.
Thank you, Rhonda. Yeah, it's so fitting that David's here today for this launch event, being such a key spark in that journey. And as you mentioned, there are so many incredible revelations in the Greatest Secret, as well as practical sort of practices, really, for putting those revelations into action in our lives. In the book, Rhonda, you talk about the idea that happiness is our true nature. So if that is the case, what gets in the way of our happiness?
What gets in the way of our happiness is our mind. And so we could actually even drill it down to make it even simpler than that. What gets in the way of our happiness is a single thought. And we have a thought, and then we think that thought over and over, and it becomes a belief. And so we have a whole lot of beliefs inside of us that are operating all of the time, and we cannot experience the world other than through our beliefs. So the world is not the way that we see it because it's colored by our beliefs, and those beliefs can always, I think I could say always, I was going to say usually, but I think I could say always, are limiting, come from limitation and lack, which is what we are not. And so beliefs, thoughts, negative feelings are what cover up who we really are. And happiness is our true nature. That is who we are. A blissful happiness, actually, a happiness that's beyond probably what most people have ever felt. Even when they got that very thing that they really wanted, or that huge dream came true, this is a happiness that is absolutely, oh my gosh, is so beautiful. And so that happiness is our true nature. So then we just all have to stop and think, well, if I have that inside of me already, and we do, every single human being does, every single one, then why am I not happy? And it's the mind with its stories, with its, you know, being really tough on us. You shouldn't have done that. That was dumb. You know, all those kinds of things that the mind does. And we are just so much more than that. So yes, that's why happiness is, that's why many of us are not experiencing the blissful happiness that is our true nature.
Incredible. David, did you want to add anything to that discussion?
Yes, I'd like to actually. I feel that the mind is given too much attention by human beings, because we're actually led to believe that the mind actually represents 100% of our consciousness, when in reality the mind is less than 1% of our consciousness. It's just that there's a misunderstanding about the way the mind functions, because everything that we're always doing and everything that people are engaged in to try to seek happiness, they're actually seeking their true nature. They're seeking the infinite self, infinite consciousness. And well, to give a couple of examples, for instance, people who enjoy spectator sports, if somebody goes, say, to a football match, what they're going there for is to try to experience infinite consciousness. And the way they're trying to do that is they want to see one of their players performing in a way that just demonstrates that their activity is way beyond the capability of the mind. You see the flow of the way they play, and it creates this sense of awe and this sense of inner bliss. And that's really true of most things that people are engaged in. So whether it's watching a football match, or whether it's going to the opera, or whether it's watching a film, we're always looking for that sense of heightened awareness, which is beyond the mind, which is one's true nature. And in terms of creative people, the same thing applies. So people who are writers, they like to get into the flow where what they're writing is totally effortless. And they're actually functioning from their effortless, infinite nature. It's just that they've been told that it's the mind that's doing it, but it's never been the mind. And the same is true of whether it's musicians or dancers or artists or poets. We're always seeking to go beyond the limitations of the mind. And that's what everyone is already doing. But they don't realize that that's what they're doing. They think that it's, because they like this particular football team, or because they admire this particular musician or this particular writer. But everything has the same motivation, which is to experience one's true nature. But the difference between a secondary mode of experience like that and the greatest secret is the greatest secret gives you direct access to that. So you don't need any kind of intermediary.
And David, when you were talking about, I love that you brought up effortless being, because it's the mind suggests to us all of the time that we should be doing a whole lot of action and doing and putting effort, and you need to do all of these things to achieve in life, and you need to be productive. And so the mind is telling us all of those things, when in truth, life becomes absolutely incredible when you let go of that. Yes. And you become effortless, and then just everything just appears just because you're effortless, just as you said earlier with students and teaching, that when you let it go, then it all came. And I just think, on my journey, that I feel that that everything in life is the opposite to what we've been led to believe. Absolutely everything. We're born and we die. Absolutely, the truth is the opposite. Yes. to all of that. And the other thing about effort is, underneath effort is I'm not going to make it, kind of. There's kind of struggle under effort, and there's fear under effort. And also under effort is I don't have this. And so that makes it really, really challenging. And yet when we're effortless, the happiness in us arises. And so, yeah, I just had to comment, because I love that you brought up about effortless being, because it's absolutely beautiful.
Well, effortless being is key, Rhonda, as we both know, because
yes.
the game we're all playing is really to experience the extreme limitation of human life as an opportunity to experience our true nature by contrast. So we're having this experience of limitation, and we feel as though we're bound in time and space and that we're bound by the physical body, when none of those things are actually true. Right. And the way we can go beyond those limitations is by beginning to notice effortlessness more than engaging the mind, making an effort and feeling as though we have to achieve things in time. Because it's actually a kind of portal in a way into our true nature, which is that our true nature is effortless. Our true nature is also neutral. And so for instance, when listening to the audiobook of The Greatest Secret, the best mode to experience that in is in a state of effortlessness and in a state of neutrality, because that is actually the basis on which we can see our true nature. And also in terms of reading the book, because when reading the book, there are going to be lots of new concepts for people to take in. But the way to do that is in a state of effortlessness. So it's important not to allow the mind to come in and say things like, oh, I don't understand this, or I don't agree with this. You know, the mind is basically a device which is for discrimination and judgment, and it can be used in a very effective way, but it can also undermine one's ability to experience happiness, because once you recognize that our true nature is infinite and it's also effortless, then we can begin to align our consciousness before we engage in either, say, reading the book or listening to the audiobook. And by doing that, we're actually in the realm that we need to be to realize our true nature, because the only space that we can realize our true nature is when we're in a state of effortlessness, when we're neutral, when there's no judgment, and when there's an openness, and when there is no duality, because the mind is actually a dualistic device. It creates the sense of oneself being here and then the world being out there, when really life is unity, and we can begin to experience that directly. And it's important for people to know that the greatest secret isn't just about learning those concepts. It's realizing that it's something that is directly known. Self-realization isn't just on the conceptual level, it's actually non-conceptual. And so taking it really easy, reading the text or listening to the words in a way where one is totally effortless, and the mind doesn't need to try to grasp the meaning. It's more about just allowing and just being really easy with the whole process, and enjoying it. The more one can enter into a state of joy, relaxation, ease, then the more benefit that can be derived from this knowledge.
Yes, because the mind sabotages us, doesn't it? It will, it will do its best to sabotage us from discovering the greatest secret, make the greatest discovery we can ever make. So I think they're really wise words, because the mind can come in, and certainly over the last 4 years, that has been my journey of being able to distinguish there is the mind, and not falling for the mind, and I would just fall for it again. And my teacher that I have in the US would say, I would speak to her, she would say, well, that's the mind. That's the mind. And I'd be like, oh, darn, there's the mind. There's the mind again. I fell for it again. And so, and it's got a whole kind of basket of tricks, the mind that it comes up with to try and distract us. And so they're really wonderful words for people when they're reading the book, is to just, be aware of those thoughts that come in and say, I don't understand this, or I don't really get this. Because in truth, every single word in that book, already. Every single person, You all know who you are, knows everything that is in that book. This is not news to you. And so it's really a process of remembering. That's what it is. It's remembering who you are. So, yeah.
Wonderful.
Excellent. I have so many questions for both of you.
Okay.
This is, it's incredible. So I want to go back a little bit to this idea about, we just touched on, so for those people who are, living in the world today, there's so much sort of anxiety and frustration and fear going on. And in the book, Rhonda, and The Greatest Secret, there's this really powerful discussion about the ways in which anger, frustration, anxiety stem from suppressed feelings. Mm-hmm. And I would love, Rhonda, for you to talk a little bit about the ways in which these negative thoughts and anger are not coming from the outside, but they rather come from inside of us.
Sure. And so if we experience a feeling, any negative feelings, we only suppress negative feelings pretty well. And so if we experience a feeling of disappointment like I did, or anger or whatever, I thought the disappointment was coming from the situation that had happened to me. But that disappointment was coming from disappointment that I had suppressed inside of me. So we cannot experience a negative emotion unless we have already suppressed it. And for most of us, we suppress these emotions when we were small children. And, it's usually the whole gamut of them. So if we have felt an emotion, we have suppressed it. And what happens is, in the world, because these emotions are energy, and they create a lot of pressure, and they need to be released. And so what happens is there will be a trigger that will happen in the world that will help us release, like a pressure cooker, release some of that emotion. And for example, what we have seen with 2020 has been a lot of people, a lot of fear coming out of people. But that fear was already in everybody. And they're experiencing it because of the circumstances in the outside world, but the fear was already there. And so in The Greatest Secret, you've taken step by step in how you can release these negative emotions for good. And once you release a negative emotion, and I did release one, I released one around depression, and I didn't even know what I was doing at that time. It was just intuitive, and I knew what to do. And so instead of resisting it, I didn't resist it. I welcomed this feeling. I kind of put my arms around this feeling. And people might think, oh, that would be really hard, because we don't like negative feelings. We push them away. We don't want to feel them, but that's how they get suppressed. And they do not help our health at all. And they do not help all of the things that we want to experience in life, because they're acting as kind of blocks in some way. And they're covering over our happiness. So yes, all of those feelings are suppressed inside of us. So if you feel disappointment over somebody who said something to you, or hurt over something that somebody said to you, and you're so sure that it's that situation that you just experienced, the hurt was already inside of you, and it needed a release to release some of it. But it's still there. And so hopefully through The Greatest Secret, I have done it. That has been my journey. When any feeling has come up, I have released it. And it is a high, I am telling you, oh my gosh, it is, you just feel lighter. And then you realize that all of these feelings were super heavy that you were carrying around, really heavy weight, and you just feel lighter and lighter. And of course, you're happier and happier with everyone. And so never will you doubt again. Never will you feel unworthy again. Never will you question yourself again. I can't do this, or I'm not good enough. That they are gone. They have to be gone, because none of those things are true about anybody.
So yes, there's this common belief among so many that, quote, I'll be happy when, right? Whether that's in a relationship or the right job or the right goal. But you write that we can all begin with happiness today, right? That it's part of who we are. It is who we are.
Yeah.
So Yeah, I'd love to hear from you both. Let's start with David on this point.
Well, to continue along the lines of Rhonda's conversation, the key thing to realize is that our true nature is effortless being, and it's also neutral, and it's also totally easy. So what we've done is we've adopted certain concepts of limitation about ourselves, and quite a few of them we inherit from our family. You know, they're sort of written into the DNA. And what I found with most people that I've spoken to where there has been self-realization is that they've actually got, most people have got one or two beliefs which keep the idea of being an individual and being a limitation in place. And it's letting go of those which actually reveals happiness to us, because it's those beliefs, because lots of them, they're sort of conditioned patterns, and we see our parents behaving in a particular way. You know, we see our teachers, we see our friends, and there aren't many of them actually. There are probably only about 5 or 6, but they're things like, I'm not good enough, there's something wrong with me, nobody loves me. Those sort of core things which can motivate our behavior. And they're also the things that, what we tend to do is we tend to use a lot of effort to try to suppress those. As Rhonda said, people tend to push those negative emotions down, when really by being non-judgmental about oneself, we can allow them to come to the surface, and we can look at them in a totally honest way. For instance, my family conditioning was actually to do with inferiority. And the way that plays out, inferiority tends to manifest as arrogance. And that's how it was for me, especially in my teenage years. Because you have this feeling of inferiority. Because my family is just ordinary working class people, the sort of social structure in the UK, you know, the class system, gives the idea that you are actually inferior. But there has to be a point for each of us where we realize that for there to be self-realization, there has to be a sense of total equality with everyone and everything in life. Because for there to be unity, there's no hierarchy in unity, so there has to be equality. And that is the thing that we have to fully accept. So we have to fully accept equality, we have to fully accept unity, and we have to accept our infinite nature. And the way we do that is actually by being conscious about the programs of limitation. And Rhonda's description there was brilliant. And the thing about Rhonda actually, when we first met and the first conversation we had, is that Rhonda didn't actually have any obvious concepts of limitation running about herself. I think all the work she had done through The Secret had eliminated most of those. There are obviously still 1 or 2 still running. And Rhonda was very fortunate to meet an amazing teacher a couple of months after she and I spoke. And the benefit of that is that the process of integration has been overseen by Rhonda's teacher. And so that's how the remnants of the concepts of limitation have been released, and how one's innate happiness can come to the surface, because it's those concepts of limitation that keep a lid on the innate happiness that's there. And so it's important for everyone. So everyone who has read The Secret is actually in a more beneficial situation, because they've probably already been addressing these sort of issues. You know, issues to do with self-worth, or issues to do with confidence and these sort of things. And so anyone, the great thing is that anyone who's actually listening to this broadcast is already really well on track, because firstly, they're familiar with the concepts of The Secret. And secondly, they're actually already acting on the basis of inspiration rather than on the mind, because the reason they're here is because they've had that feeling of joy and inspiration and lightness, which has inspired them to attend this conversation.
Yes, and David also there, and I agree with you 100% with the fact that the secret, people who've read The Secret, it's really going to help them a lot. Because one of the reasons is too because they've become aware of their thoughts. Like when they realized how powerful their mind was in this material world, when they realized how powerful it was and how powerful their thoughts were, the very first thing you do, I remember when I discovered The Secret, I suddenly became aware of thoughts. And up until then, I was unconscious. I was hypnotized by what was going on in my head. And I also think, and one of the things in The Greatest Secret, and it was a revelation for me, absolute revelation on my journey, was the voice in your head is not you. That was just like, wow. Because as I say in The Greatest Secret, it sounds like you, you know, it's very familiar. It's very familiar to you. It knows an awful lot about you, but it isn't you. And I just think knowing that helps us stop identifying with it. And I mean, the mind is an incredible tool. It's an incredible tool to create what you want. I mean, if we just thought about what we want all of the time, that's all we would get in our life. And so it's wonderful in that regard, but it's also can be everybody's greatest torturer. And I think that people would understand that with the year that they've had. And if they've suffered from a lot of anxiety and fear, then they will know the kind of suffering they've been through has been the tirade of terrifying thoughts that the mind has delivered up to them. And they've been the recipient of that. And I just, you know, you can be free. People can be free of this. You can be free of this. And it is not hard. You know, it's not hard. You already have what is required. You don't have to go and get it anywhere. You don't have to achieve anything. You don't need a degree. You don't have to struggle. There's nothing that you have to do. Everything, you have it already. You are that already. And so all it is just a matter of seeing that. It's just like a slight shift in perception, a slight shift in the way we look at things. I remember my teacher used to say to me, she would say, you're looking away. You keep looking away and looking in the wrong direction. And I would be like, no, I'm looking at it. I'm trying to look at it. But I think that's really great, because once you see it, once you fully realize it, then life begins.
Yes. Well, two of the teachers who are, I mean, I love every teacher that you've featured in the book. I think they're amazing, and I feel really privileged to be one of those.
Oh, you're wonderful.
But the variety of knowledge is amazing. But you know, the total humility and commitment to bring this knowledge to the wider public is an amazing opportunity for us all. But just going back to two teachers who featured in my own development in the early days prior to realization were Eckhart Tolle and Lester Levinson. And so Lester Levinson, he's really good at describing what you were just saying, which is that you realize the mind will manifest anything. And what Lester says, he says, well, if you look at the way you've created sickness, depression, ill health, and adversity, he said, see how effectively you've done that, and then just turn it around, and you can begin to focus on the things that you can create.
Right.
So that's amazing. And he also is wonderful in the way he exposes the he exposes the subconscious programs of limitation, which we've all been subjected to, and enables us to release them. And because your teacher is a student of Leicester, then you were really fortunate to have that knowledge available, because during the process of integration, we have to release those concepts of limitation and the sort of self-judgment. And that's crucial, because when you know that your true nature is neutrality and you know that it's effortless, you have to get into a position where you are on that level of equality with all of life. So if you're holding a concept of limitation, which is either that you're better than other people or that you're not as good as other people, those concepts have to be totally erased, because the portal into one's true nature, because our true nature is totally stable and it's also welcoming in its own nature, we have to be able to align ourselves with the attributes of our infinite nature to be able to realize it. So we have to create that environment in our own inner knowing to be able to do that. And so learning to just let go of those concepts of limitation is really important, and that can happen before realization, and sometimes it needs to happen afterwards, because there is a residue sometimes. But I think Eckhart Tolle is someone who is really good at teaching us how to remain neutral in situations of adversity, as you know, lots of people have experienced this year. And that is by observing the mind, because when we begin to notice that we can observe our thoughts and emotions, we realize that we're not the thoughts and we're not the emotions. And it's the very act of witnessing the thoughts and witnessing the feelings that disconnects the energy supply from those. And because it's our own energy supply that is feeding those emotions. And when we're able, and when we realize that it's possible to disconnect the energy supply, we can remain neutral. So, you know, in the current circumstances in 2020, the best thing we can do for ourselves is to remain emotionally neutral, because that will preserve our own health and energy. But also on a collective level, we're not actually feeding the collective fear. And that's really important. So for everyone, you know, if everyone could realize that, the situation we find ourselves in collectively now would just dissolve. It's only because we've collectively fed this, but we're able to dissolve that. And fortunately, it's the thing that's best for ourselves too. Beautiful.
I think we could go on for hours and hours. It's incredible. Thank you both so much. You know, I just going back, you know, as we're winding up here, I think, you know, one of the things that I think is most, I want to say about the book, The Greatest Secret, is it is this incredible distillation of ancient wisdom. And when you read it, you feel that power of these timeless truths. But it's more than that, because what Rhonda has done in this book, with the help of contributors like David, there is advice for the experience right now, practical things that we can do to, you know, relieve some of those things, as we were talking about, the stress and the anxiety. And I think that's really, you know, one of the most important takeaways here is, you know, that it's rare to have the combination of this incredible timeless wisdom with these practical pieces as well. So as we wind up, Rhonda, I know that you know, this book is, I think you wrote in the book that it's one of the most important books you've written to date. I just want you to share for everyone listening today and watching today, sort of what your vision for it is and mission.
Well, it was created to free people from suffering and to put the truth in front of them. hopefully they will remember the truth. And it's for everybody, because you know, when David speaks of self-realization, another word you know, that people might be familiar with, the self-realization is like enlightenment, or word like that. And then people would automatically think, well, that's not for me. You know, I mean, the Buddha was enlightened and all of these incredible beings were enlightened, but it is for you because it's who you are already. And I have just such an incredible love for humanity, and the courage we have to be in this physical world. And as David said, playing this game of limitation, I think it takes enormous courage to play this game of limitation. And I want people to be free and to be happy and to be returned to their natural state. And it's for those that are ready for that. And there are many teachers in the book, and that is deliberate, teachers with all different wisdom, because, you know, different teachers speak to people, different people at different times. But what I do want to say is every single teacher in that book has changed my life. They are my journey from The Secret until 2020. And so all of them have changed my life in some way or another. And so my wish is that it will change people's lives too, and they will find the true happiness that they are.
Beautiful. David, thank you so much for joining us today. Rhonda, thank you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, David. So wonderful to see you. Really wonderful. And I love that. I'd love to know those other three things that you were talking about at some point or another that were not good enough. And they were really amazing. So thank you, David, very much. Gideon, thank you. So lovely.
We really
to everybody.
2 more hours. I wanted to leave and just let you guys talk for hours and be a fly off. You're both so incredible. So thank you so much for sharing.